deal with conflicts of interest. So Pfizer pays Facebook a lot of money for advertising, and then Facebook will therefore have a conflict of interest in when people say, for example, the vaccine didn't stop transmission. Well, guess what? It didn't stop transmission, and people have had their posts pulled down, people have lost their pages because of that. So how are we going to deal with conflicts of interest where, foreign social media companies that are basically unregulated here in Australia are censoring free speech and reasonable speech?
Well, Senator, I think I understand the issue you've raised. I mean, I think the answer to that will be, in a sense, embedded in what the industry comes up with under any code they put together, or ultimately
Sorry to interrupt
standard.
you, but my concern is there is conflict of interest within the industry, because often the same people who own the media companies are the same people that own big pharma companies. So how are we going to regulate? Because what I'm looking for is for my constituents to be protected from big business and government overreach. Who's going to protect their right to communication?
So, Senator, I think you've touched on, this does touch on one of the really tricky design pieces in here. What's the right role for government in this space? Which raises questions, which is a complicated question. What's the right role for the platforms? What are the right role and rights for individuals within that scheme? Quite intentionally, this is a scheme which sees the government establishing rules to deal with the system rather than to deal with individual pieces of content, as Ms Sullivan and Mr Hales have pointed out. I think the expectation is that the industry, the sector, the digital platforms will have mechanisms that will be able to adequately deal with and respond to complaints as a consequence of
Well, I can tell you now they don't.
But, Senator, what I'm saying is, this is why I said I think it does depend a little bit on what plays out over time once these rules are established. We haven't yet got the legislation in existence. There will be the opportunity for the industry to produce codes. It may be they're considered unsatisfactory, but that is why, as Ms Sullivan said, there are two important points of this legislative scheme. One is that the regulator will be able to understand the nature, gather information from the platform. So if there is an overwhelming number of complaints about platforms overreaching and taking down content, that is the sort of information that the ACMA would be able to understand from the platforms.
Okay, thanks. Look, I'll finish up because I know Sarah's
inadequate in their responses, the ACMA can ultimately impose a standard on how the system should respond.
And you know, in that legislation, and the Minister might be able to help you, it is coming up in the Parliament?
Well, an exposure draft will be released for public comment.
Yes.
But before it goes into Parliament.
Yeah, but like sort of in the next month, or how far away?
That's what we
okay, cheers. Thank you.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.